Welcome, Professor Holler. Welcome to our session today. We have our department chair, Professor Elizabeth Holler, as well here with us today. We are honored to have her, willing to come into our session this morning. Okay, all right. So I think it's good. Without wasting more time, I feel that we can start our session now. So today, like I mentioned in our a few times in our class, that we're gonna have a Malaysian senior PR strategist from the Ministry of Tourism, Arts and Culture from Malaysia, and she is now here with us to share with us her experience as a PR strategist. Okay, we are honored to have Miss Barbara Dubah Jabu from Malaysia. And it is now, I know it's 11:30 now in Malaysia. So we appreciate your time, and we truly appreciate, all the information that you're going to share with us today. A little bit introduction about Miss Barbara. She is a special officer, transformation and strategic communication to the YB Dato Sri Nancy Shukri, Minister of Tourism, Malaysia. And she received her education from RMIT, Australia, in communication studies and also professional communication back in 1995, 1996. So that's about 20 years before you guys were born, right? So you guys were born like around early 2000. And I was born, I was like 10 years old when she completed all her education in Australia. So without much further ado, I'm gonna, give this floor to Ms. Barbara Dubah Jabu to give her presentation today. So should I play the video that you provided?
Maybe I'll just say a few words first.
Yes, sure.
So good morning, everyone. It's actually good evening here, or good night. But wonderfully, we have technology which connect all of us. In any part of the world, we can see each other. So a pleasure to meet all of you, and to Professor Elizabeth Holler. Thank you for joining our session, and thank you for inviting me. So I'd like to share a video just to give everyone a little bit of flavor of where myself and Dr. Nurianti come from. I'm not sure how many of you have been to Malaysia here. Can I have a show of hands?
I don't think anybody ever.
Okay, great. So we're gonna start with the video. So this video should be able to give you a little bit of a taste of Malaysia. So over to you.
Okay, so I'll play this video. Let me know if you guys can hear or cannot hear anything. So that was a video. There's no sound. Was there no sound?
There was sound. I could hear the audio, the visual too.
Okay, did Professor Holly didn't seem to get to hear the sound, but some of you, there was no sound. No, there was sound. Okay, but no photo. Was it like not moving at all? Were the video, did you guys manage to see the video? Everybody else?
I could see the video. It was just lagging a little bit. But I could still see it and I could hear it just fine.
Okay, all right. So it's maybe like some technological issue, perhaps the internet issue. But I can share with you the video later on by email. Okay, so that video is actually from the PR department that is managed by Ms. Dubah Jabu, and it received an award from what we call it. You can add on.
Okay, so basically I think because my background, I'm currently working with the Ministry of Tourism, Arts and Culture.
Why is it like this?
That you've just seen, I'd like to credit it to Tourism Malaysia, and it is a creative vision and execution coupled with state-of-the-art 8K video quality of the amazing video. So the title of the video is amazing. You can find it on YouTube. And it won global recognition at the Asia Destination Film Awards 2020 in Bangkok in January 2020. So the video is also a collaboration with Tourism Malaysia and Sharp Electronics, which took home an award in Tourism Board category, overcoming 1,000 other submissions and 34 shortlisted films. So the video was awarded the special award Magic Eye for Best Camera Work in 2021, and Tourism and Travel Media Intermedia Gold Award at the 21st World Media Festivals in Hamburg, Germany. So it's directed by Mark Toya and production techniques by Chili Pepper Films. So basically, in short, that's where we come from, myself and Dr. Nurianti. A little bit about myself. I come from the state of Sarawak, born and raised in Kuching. Kuching is a little tiny city, which is located in the eastern, thanks Doc, I forgot about my slide. So this first slide here, you can see it in black and white. This is my traditional costume. So the reason why I put it in black and white, so you can imagine back during the days, we were dressed up as it is, when life was still in black and white, when television was still in black and white, when we haven't had color in technology. So the female gear that you can see, the female outfit is heavily accessorized in silver. So we have silver headgear, silver corset, silver necklace, bracelets, and so on and so forth. And you can imagine the entire weight would be about 18 kilograms. And to the right, which is the complete opposite, the men are pretty light geared, but they do wear a headgear. Back in the olden days, it was the hornbill headgear, but we don't use hornbill anymore. We don't capture hornbills per se, but this is just part of the men's headgear. So this tribe is called the Iban Tribe, and they used to be, or we used to be, headhunters. So don't be worried. You can still come and visit us in Sarawak. We don't chop heads anymore. So the only thing that we headhunt are talents for now. So let's move to the next slide. Doc. Okay, so this is the actual color. You will see a lot of red and silver. It's also quite similar to the highland tribes in Taiwan. If you are quite aware of cultural heritage or cultural outfits of the various tribes around the world, we do have similarities with the Taiwanese Highlanders. So basically, Sarawak is in the exotic island of Borneo, and it is an eastern state in Malaysia. We have 13 states, and Sarawak is being known as one of the largest states. So it's a land of multiracial, multilingual, multi-religious society. And at one point, we were actually under the British colonization. So the Ibans, we reside by the sea, actually. So the British at that time relied on two native groups to take care of the well-being of the state. So we have two native tribes known as the Bidayu and the Ibans, and another Highlander tribes known as the Orang Ulu. But typically the Ibans are also famous for being called the Sea Dayak because we reside by the sea, by the river, whereas the land Dayaks are the Bidayu tribes. So as you've heard from Dr. Nurianti Jali, I gained my education in Australia. My parents are both civil service, in the civil service. My mother was a history teacher, a geography teacher, and an English teacher. And my father is an agricultural officer, started off his career as an agricultural officer. So how did I land myself working for two ministers? Before I joined the current minister, I was also assisting another minister who was formerly in charge of transformation for the government of Malaysia. I'm not sure if you're aware of him. His name is Dato Sri Idris Jala. He did run massive government and economic transformation programs for the country. So prior to joining Dato Sri Idris Jala, I worked with Ogilvy Public Relations in Malaysia. So one of the big accounts that I took care of was Shell. Shell Malaysia, they introduced their product, the Shell Fuel Safe 95 at that point of time. It was quite an interesting account because I had my share of interview with the Formula One drivers. We even took them around Kuala Lumpur, KLCC, our famous monument, and brought a few anchor personalities to test our Sepang circuit at that point in time. I've also worked with quite a lot of fast-moving consumer goods, FMCG. As you can see, I've worked for a beer company, Guinness Anchor Berhad, United Parcel Service, UPS. I've worked for Highway, Legoland. I've also assisted with Disneyland in Hong Kong, Legoland Malaysia. So it was quite an interesting career at that point in time. But I had no idea I was joining Ogilvy when I first started my career in a wafer fabrication plant. So it's a foundry whereby we had a different change of environment. We worked for the Japanese partner, which is Sharp Corporation of Japan at that point in time. Then we changed to our German partners. So the Japanese and the Germans are equally stringent in their requirements. So I suppose that training helped. So then I'm going to fast forward a little bit. Previous slide, please, Doc. So before I joined the current Minister of Tourism, Arts and Culture, I assisted a little bit with preschool education. So as an NGO, basically, I had the interest of teaching Jolly Phonics, introducing phonetics to our preschool preschoolers. It was interesting because it happened just before the COVID-19 pandemic took place. So being in rural area, we had different sort of challenges, and bringing different type of language into, which is considered alien to the rural community. It was an interesting journey altogether. Then why and how did I land my career in tourism, arts and culture? That was a year ago. The minister had asked for help in terms of transformation. So because of some of my experiences helping out with the former Minister for Transformation, Performance Management and Delivery Unit, so the comms part was essential in building the team to ensure that we're all geared to move with different sorts of challenges. So I'll move to the next slide. Okay, so how is public relations, how and what is public relations to begin with? I think, first of all, we have to define what is public. So does public mean, who are the audience of public? When you deal with the government, who are the members of the public that we have to work with? Are they private or public sectors? If they're public sectors, which agency do they belong to? Or are they women or the youth? Or are they young or old? Is it gender-based, male or female? Are they living in the urban or are they living in the rural? So there are a lot of factors that we have to put into consideration when we work with the various stakeholders. Are they a privileged group or underprivileged? So in defining our public, it is crucial to know the needs of what the public want. And perception in the world of public relations is everything. You may not be able to steer around the world of public relations if you are unable to project the image or the subject that you're presenting. So the role of strategic communications is also crucial because now with technology, there's so much to offer. As I said, with Zoom now, everything is within a click of a button. But are we ready for this? I'm not sure. Look at Facebook, it's moving towards Meta now. And who would have thought when I was still in high school, who would have thought that we could actually travel to space? So there's so much things that have changed or that have brought the world closer together. So strategic communications in addressing our partners, in addressing our stakeholders is also prevalent in this practice of PR. So the next point on challenges faces a PR practitioner working with government and its agencies. There's no doubt there's a bureaucracy involved in every little thing that we do, especially for somebody like me. I come from the Native community. It's still a minority in our state, in our nation, but yet we have to be inclusive in the policies that we do, in the cultural experiences, in cultural representation. Just as an example, the Ministry of Tourism, Arts and Culture, we do have a national tourism policy. So each and every part of the policy has to be inclusive. In Sarawak alone, the state where myself and Dr. Nurianti come from, we have more than 32 ethnic groups. So how is it that the government can represent the views of these 32 and beyond ethnic groups? That's one area that we need to look into. And then there's this digitization and digitalization. Up until today, a lot of people are confused what this means. Digitization is the act of bringing content into digital space, and digitalization is making your content available online as well as offline to those who do not have internet access. So this is very important for Malaysia, I feel, especially Sarawak, because a lot of our rural areas are not 100% accessible via the internet. Of course, we talk about Industrial Revolution 4.0, Internet of Things, but is the community ready? This is another question that we need to ask. If they're not ready, how do we bridge the gap? How do we define this cultural shock when a child or a family has never been exposed to technology per se? You know, it can be a shock to the system. We did face some challenges or further challenges during the pandemic. So COVID has taught us a lot of resilience. Let me share a bit of an example. As a public relations practitioner, when you want to introduce a program, what happens to someone who has not even seen an iPad or a tablet or an Android, and suddenly lessons are brought to our children on these gadgets? And most of these gadgets are only affordable by parents, because it's the parents who could buy them from the market. And yet a family with 5 or more children will have to share one gadget. So these are some of the real challenges on the ground that we have to address. So in the role of public relations, what we do will have to be inclusive. So moving on to the third point, inclusive policies, competitiveness, and sustainable. We have to work towards greening the organization. So this has a lot to do with working together, having the right synergy. Under our ministry, we have 13 agencies. And imagine the staff strength of all the agencies and units under the Tourism, Arts and Culture Ministry. We have more than 11,000 staff members. So how do we get 11,000 people on the same boat? This is a huge challenge. Now, public relations post-pandemic, a lot of things are done differently because of the new norm. Another example I could share is when we do business events, when we want to do conventions and exhibitions, the suppliers and organizers are bound by strict SOPs. So you have to wear a mask, you have to take your temperature, and you have to stand at least 3 meters apart. And for every event or venue that you attend, you have to show your digital certificate, make sure that you are double vaccinated. So to get to this point, it just hinders people from attending events. But yet we have to make the economic sector resilient, and to push forward for recovery, things have to happen. Events have to take place. Then the economy gets to restart or recalibrate with post-pandemic. So some of the challenges lies there, but it's more of the problem solving that we get to enjoy in defining the exact moment in addressing each and every problem. So that leads us to the final point, which is building stronger relationships. So for a country like Malaysia, we do have 13 states, 1 region, which is called Wilayah Persekutuan, which covers Labuan also, and Wilayah Jaya. And when we talk about region, we have the northern states, we have the southern states, we also have the central and the eastern states, all the way in East Malaysia. What does this mean? Different states are affected by different seasons. when it's monsoon season towards end of the year, how are things able to, how does business continue when you have to shut down the island, when tourists aren't coming in? How do you ensure that there's food on people's table? So all these are part of public relations problems or opportunities that we can assist. And while defining our public, we need to see what the national and international audience require. This include bilateral policies or work that we have to do with our ASEAN counterpart. So about, I think 3 weeks ago, we had just come back from one of the islands in the northern part of Malaysia. It's called Pulau Bidong or Bidong Island. Among the ASEAN states, we actually created underwater attraction. So we sank landmarks from all the ASEAN countries. So for Malaysia, we have the Kuala Lumpur, the KLCC Tower. So it's about 25 meters deep. We sank them in. They are friendly to the corals. And all the other ASEAN nations like Cambodia, Thailand, we have the Shwedagon temple all the way underwater. So these are underwater tourism products, which we try to create so that divers can come and see the underwater, the mini underwater landmark in our shores. So please, I do invite everyone to come to Malaysia. There's so much to talk about, but I don't want to talk too much because I want to hear from all of you how I can assist. And I'm not representing the government of Malaysia. So happens that I do work for two or one minister in the past and currently serving one. But I'd like to hear how I can assist or how I can add value to your paper or to your work. So back to Dr. Nuryanti. We can do Q&A or I'll leave it open to you.
Thank you so much for such an interesting and insightful presentation. So I believe all of my students, got to learn new things. What are some of the tasks that you have to do as a PR practitioner for government agencies and also for other agencies? If you can see, we are totally honored to have Ms. Dubah Jabu. Fun fact, I also want to share this. Ms. Dubah Jabu also comes from a family of government servant, like she said, and her father is actually deputy chief minister of our state, Sarawak, and
former
chief minister. Former deputy chief minister of our state in Sarawak, and her brother also happens to be a state representative also of my state. And I am also honored to have her here today to represent my state in Sarawak and to give voice, our native voice, because I'm half native too, half Iban too. That you guys saw all these pictures, interesting pictures just now. And if you can see that, based on her experience, she worked also with Ogilvy. It's one of big four of PR in the world. It's not just in Malaysia, it's in the world. So we are, more than lucky to have her here with us, and she stayed up. It's almost 12 p.m. back home in Malaysia. So I want to ask a question based on the presentation that you just gave. Perhaps one of the things that the students have question on what will be the skills or perhaps that they have to learn to become an effective PR representative or PR professionals, other than learning all these communication classes. What do you think in terms of like personal resilience, perhaps? Your opinion, what other skills and features, characteristic that someone has to have in order to become an effective PR practitioner?
I think, thanks for the question, Doc. First and foremost, in the world of public relations, you have to be daring enough to try anything and everything. because you'll be placed on the same league as your colleagues when you first join the organization, whether you're given a corporate account or a FMCG account or fast moving consumer goods or an investment account. You have to be prepared. You will be going against the tide because your client will be so demanding and they want 26 hours of your time. We don't have 26 hours in a day, but they expect you to serve them 26 hours. Now, how is it that we can work smart? And lucky for us now, we have technology. However, technology does have its downside, I would say. For example, by having access to Androids and all, everybody is a journalist now. You have your handphone with you. You can get news from any part of the world. Now, while technology is important, gone are the days of investigative reporting. Folks now are more reliant on online news to the point that they become lazy in fact finding. So this is when Donald Trump used to say fake news, right? Or any leaders of the world would be saying, no, that's not true. Hang on a minute. In our world of public relations, we must do our fact check. We must be reporting based on facts, because whatever you do, it has to be supported by facts. So you have to be really, really hardworking in finding your data, because the client will return to the dashboard and say, show me your proof. Why is the competitor doing better than me? So if I have Guinness Anchor Berhad, they may challenge and say, Heineken sales is doing better. Carlsberg is doing better. Why aren't we doing better, for example? So another good story to share in Malaysia during the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, would you believe that Heineken Malaysia actually changed their business strategy? They actually sent barmen to people's homes and served them liquor for a short party or short period. So this is how the world has changed. You know, you can't go out to the liquor store. So hang on a minute, let us serve you. We bring the service over to you. So this is how the world has changed. Sunway Hotels, another example. During the pandemic, they were the first hotel that offered their convention center as a vaccination venue for Malaysians. And they took the time to refurbish their facilities, and they also brought Gordon Ramsay restaurant to Malaysia. So these are new, different ideas, but very interesting. It's also interesting to see that while a lot of people have lost their jobs during tough times, but a lot more new and upcoming amenities, facilities have opened up too. For example, homestays in Malaysia. I do see that in different parts of the country, there's a certain surge in homestays. So people are starting to share their livelihood, how the crafters from the rural areas actually show on YouTube or on TikTok, how they can sell their products. So these are some of the skills. I think you have to be innovative and creative, and the faster you capture the market, the more successful you'll be.
Yeah, so all this, criteria, characteristic that you have to have, and kind of like polish, soft skills, critical thinking, innovative, what we call it, hardworking. We want to, invest time and effort to kind of like work and find the best solutions depending on situations. So I'm going to open the floor to all the students. So if you guys have any questions, do not hesitate to unmute yourself and ask direct questions, because we're not going to have Miss Barbara every day. So you perhaps want to ask questions. Anybody with questions?
You had mentioned working with like various different ministries and agencies. Like, what are the ones that you you have or you do work with the most?
Okay. When I was working for Ogilvy, one of my favorite client is Shell, actually, or was Shell. So Shell Global Solutions, they have very stringent requirement. And to be honest, I don't like to work with engineers. I find them really boring. But at the same time, I guess it's karma. I'm married to one now. So now I totally understand his way of thinking, because I've worked with a group of engineers. They're so demanding and everything is by the books. And we are creative people. We're trying to make something dry and boring to be interesting. So how exactly do we sell products that can't really sell in the open market? So with Shell, they were open to bringing in an ambassador. So they started the ambassador program. So out of all the different Shell Global Solutions, they have celebrities, they have influencers, key opinion leaders as their product promoter. So these are some of the interesting accounts that I've seen. As I've said, I managed to interview Rubens Barrichello and Kimi Raikkonen. So some of the drivers when we were at the circuit to understand the technology behind the product. Now with agencies, government agencies, in transformation, one of my forte, I would call it, whether you're in the civil service or private sector, you don't like to be chased by having somebody who has the whip and saying, guys, I need the report by 5 p.m. today because I have to pass it to the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister has to see which minister is performing and which isn't. If you're not performing, what's the problem on the ground? Why can't we settle the problem on the ground until it gets to a higher level? So we have a lot of problem solving meetings before it gets to the higher level. So we created a lot of dashboards also to track, or we even call it the traffic light system. So those who are in the green, well done. Those who are in amber, you better be careful. And if you're in the red, you better watch out because the big boss will breathe on you. And in Malaysia, we have different media deadlines. So we have a lot of languages, media languages that we cover. So one of the deadlines for afternoon media for the news to be captured in the next day's papers is by 4 p.m. or even 5 p.m. So to track or find things or find news angle or report news angle before 5 p.m. That is a given when you are monitoring the agencies or the civil service for that matter. So I do enjoy the private part of it, like working for private sectors. It's a different sort of challenge, but when you're trying to move the civil service using public relations, it's still quite something that's not really accepted in the government at this point of time. Yeah. So having said that, I think just use whatever strength that you have, understand them, get to know them, you know, because to be able to give or add value to what they do, you must first understand what their challenges are. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that question, and thank you so much for that elaborated, what we call it, the response to that question. And you can see that, you know, working as PR, we're not what we call it, we're not static. Sometimes we serve different kind of public. The other time we serve different kind of public, and we have to be able to kind of like shift yes, shape shift, I would say, and try to cater to our respective public. Anybody with any other question? Anyone want to ask another question?
I do.
Yeah. Okay. First Cami, and then after that, John. Okay, go ahead, Cami.
So I just did research for a project in Dr. Narayanti's other class, business and professional speaking, on intercultural communication and cross-cultural communication. And so this is kind of more of a Malaysia specific question. So like there are certain things that like American companies or any other companies need to do to communicate with Malaysian companies. What is there anything specific to Malaysia that would help? Like it could be any in public relations or anything, like us cross-culturally communicate to Malaysian people.
I think, thanks for the question, Cami, right? You just came back from your honeymoon. Congratulations. I kind of forgot listening earlier on. So first of all, whoever or whichever organization that you want to engage, you must know of the product and what you're trying to sell to them. So being culturally sensitive is key. Like in Malaysia, every Friday, we have the Friday prayers. So it is also known that when the Muslims pray from 12:30 to 2, we're not supposed to organize meetings as out of respect. But having said that, in different states of Malaysia, Fridays and Saturdays are their weekends. So Mondays will be their Sundays. So to organize events which involve the masses, we also need to know. So the timing and cultural sensitivity, when you go to the northern states, you're not supposed to, preferably if you can wear long sleeves or due to cultural appropriation, it has to be done that way. So depending on what these two countries are working on, what product you're trying to promote, and certainly by having somebody who is able to speak the local language, that would help. I tried to be an interpreter at one point, but I guess I was never good enough. But I challenged myself to learn Indonesian because as much as we thought that it's similar to Malaysian language, again, different words mean different connotations in the nation next door, although they're neighboring countries. So I'm not sure if I've addressed your question right, but it really depends on what product or what service you're trying to bring to the other side or to the different nations. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cami, for that question, because it's highly related to your presentation after after this, right? So it's about intercultural communication. How can you communicate, with sensitivity when it comes to dealing with people of different culture? So I think next we're gonna have John with his question. Do you have a question, John?
Yeah. So when you went to
Louder, John. We cannot hear you well.
okay. When you went to university for communication studies, did you know you wanted to get into public relations, or were you looking at other careers?
Thanks, John. Actually, I wanted to do legal studies, but my grades weren't good enough. So the next choice was either food nutrition. I don't know how I landed myself in communications. And the third choice was communications. Now I remember. Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology offered a 2-year course. It was a crash course. So the sacrifice was to take food nutrition or to lose 2 years and focus on my studies so I can graduate before I turn 21. That was the challenge I put to myself. So I took communications, and I suppose I enjoyed the journey as I got to know my lecturers, my subject. It did help. I had a very stunning lecturer who looked like Clark Kent. But joke aside, he was very motivating. I also picked Australian and Asian media studies. I suppose this was my official introduction to the two different cultural policies of two different countries. Yeah. So no, I never knew that I was going to be a comms graduate. In fact, I did public relations. I did double major, public relations and television broadcasting. So my first career when I came home was either to work with a news anchor, but my family wanted me to be closer to home. So I took the wafer fabrication plant or opportunity to work with the semiconductor company, with the engineers again. I think I'm destined to be with the engineers, engineering group. Okay, I hope I've answered your question, John.
Thank you so much for that question, and thank you so much for that response. Anybody else have a question? Bridget? Yeah.
Yeah. So, like going through the pandemic, like being like in PR, like how did you know you were making the right decisions and stuff like that for that, like for your field and what and stuff? But
Yeah, very good question. Thanks, Bridget. Actually, we didn't. It was a risk all the way. The risk we take was, put it this way, every single day we receive complaints and questions. When can we open the economic sector? How do I put food on the table for my family? I've lost my job. I'm no longer able to support. And you'll be surprised, the mental health was badly affected. I suppose not only in Malaysia, but across the globe. So balancing health and balancing the economy, tourism sector was the first to be hit. So we're the first to shut down, and yet we're the last to open, because tourism is about mobility. It's about movement of people. So there's always a fear of allowing us to operate economically. Everyone will be questioning, are you mad? Are you crazy that you're gonna open the borders? You know, what if people are not honest about declaring that they have been vaccinated, double vaccinated? And at that point of time, there's a lot of calibration on our digital system to capture, because we were also we're trying to catch up with New Zealand, how they have a one-stop center to monitor the movement of people in and out as the pandemic has not gone down yet. So the question, back to your question, how did you know you make the right decision? We had to work across ministries. Tourism, as I said, the first sector to close and the last sector to open. But under our ministry, we have the tourism as our first child, second child arts, third child culture. How do we ensure that these three open and every industry player who are affected can at least gain some recovery? So we have engagements with our industry players, active dialogues, hybrid as well, because we could not do physical meetings. Then we assess what are the true needs of this particular state, which premises can we open. So that's when digitization was important, where galleries started showing their products online and ticketing was done online. Everything became a cashless transaction. So we tried to adapt to the situation, but we have to be very careful also in how we approach it, because we're not just working alone in the ministry. We have to work with the immigration department, we have to work with the customs, we have to work with the Ministry of Health as they monitor how many ICU beds are being occupied. Do we have enough frontliners managing the issues? So it's a whole big machinery altogether. So with reports from the ground and sharing from the industry players, when we knew that things were moving again. So we knew that it wasn't so bad at all. Well, we did the right choice. Yeah. So I don't know if that answers too.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bridget, for that question. And thank you so much for that feedback. Anybody else want to ask questions? As you can see, there are a lot of things that we have to deal with when it comes to COVID-19 and how we have to be kind of like sensitive to our response, right? So like I said many times in class, to become a PR professional, we also have to be able to work with other departments and also have this critical thinking skill. And I think Jacob have a question. Jacob, you raise your hand.
Yeah, my question was, you talked about how hard it was for people to transition to doing everything via technology now. What region were you trying to connect with that you found it hardest for them to accommodate to using everything online, doing everything through technology?
Okay, thanks, Jacob. I think when we look at the demographics of Malaysia, most of our people are either in the semi-urban or in the rural parts. So connectivity remains an issue in the distant part of the country. Therefore, learning becomes tough, registering online becomes tough also. But before we could get their buy-in is the advocacy. So in any issue, you have to do the advocacy well. If you put awareness, if you put promotions and tactical campaigns in getting people to move from the traditional media to online media, it can work, but it takes time. And let's say, for example, for us to wanting to register our crafters to go online and sell their products so that we can promote a craft item from as far as rural Sarawak, from where we come from the highlands, we have to show them and run through the modules first in terms of training them on learning about online. Some are even illiterate. How do you talk to someone who does not know or cannot read or write? So there's a lot of advocacy, as I said. So upskilling those who are literate, we have to do upskilling and reskilling programs. We have to bring them up to speed with all this technology jargon. So bringing help to the village and bringing the village out to the urban. This is about mobility or movement as well. So we have to deal with it really carefully. So yes, it's still very much a challenge until today, but we haven't given up yet, because we know that a lot of our local artisans and crafters have successfully joined us online. And recently we achieved our target of registering about 100 entrepreneurs actually. So it's more of showing the men how to fish, so then their financial independence and realizing how wealth creation can continue in the ecosystem. I think that's more of the learnings that they gain from that experience actually. Yeah. And I must say, today in the city center, we had the United Nations World Tourism Organization Forum, which was launched by my minister. And we spoke about, if you don't know what the UNWTO is, it's a United Nations agency responsible for the promotion of responsible, sustainable, and universally acceptable tourism. So we spoke about the role of women in tourism. So how COVID has impacted women in tourism, policies for recovery through a gendered lens. So surprisingly, we have increased numbers of women tourist guides. post-pandemic. So I think it's a great development, you know. I don't know, you can ask Dr. Nuryanti. As far as I know, most guides are male, but suddenly, you know, there's a change in career, change in profession, and having these women on board, I think it's a positive thing.
Thank you so much for that question, Jacob, and thank you so much for the response, Ms. Barbara. And anybody else have any question? Okay,
I do.
Christy. Okay.
So what, in your opinion, is one of like the most enjoyable aspects of your job? Like what's one thing you like doing?
Wow, what's one? I suppose my daughter calls my work as one day when I came back from work, she asked me, Mama, are you working for the Ministry of Holiday? So I thought, that's a good terminology. Maybe you're right. I think so. Because she said, you're always in and out traveling. One moment you're at this state and next you're at another. Are you really working or are you really going on holiday? So I think, I don't know whether it's a benefit or whether, I mean, it's definitely part of the job. While it is enjoyable that you get to see different products and different places in every single engagement and meet different people, I think it's a very tiring work, very tiring altogether. I think this is where you have to balance, find a balance between your own personal time and your own time with the family and also managing the work. Yeah. So yeah, I don't have a good answer for that.
But I like the term, you know, you work for Ministry of Holiday.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's interesting. Right. I understand when you were saying that you have to travel all the time, because whenever I text you, you're somewhere, and this morning you were at Shangri-La and you're supposed to travel to another state today, but you didn't because you're everywhere in Malaysia and outside of Malaysia. So that's the perk, or perhaps, you know, the downside to it, because we're away from our family a lot of times. So that's the life of a PR professional. So we have to go and move around a lot. So another question, you guys, do you have any other questions? Yeah, David, I can see that you raise your hand. Use the button, like, you know, because I cannot see you. Okay, David.
My question is just, what approach do you think businesses should take to maintain their online presence in times of a crisis like the pandemic?
Sorry, can you repeat that, David? That's a very long question. I just want to get it right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just wondering, what do you think the best approach was for businesses to maintain their online presence to customers during a crisis like the pandemic?
Okay, best practices. I think going digital is definitely a milestone. You're either make it or you either won't make it. Those who have zero digital presence are overtaken by those who are actively on digital platform. So businesses, but having said that, you can't really compare apples to apples, because when you deal with the rural community in a place without internet, how do you sell a product online? If we were to take our products or our entrepreneurs from the rural sector in teaching them how to market their products, but yet they're not connected, it's a little bit hard, because it's also a question of supply and demand. So there's no right or wrong answer about it, I think. And you can't really compare also, let's say, if I were to sell my product using TikTok, not everyone's on TikTok. If I were to sell my product using YouTube, maybe you're not on YouTube. But some product buyers are on Insta, or some are on Twitter. The professionals would go on Twitter. And how do you reduce your product caption to just how many words that Twitter can capture? So another thing that I've learned through public relations, when you sell something, or if you want to put a message across on Facebook, on Insta, on Twitter, it has to be totally different. I also learned this from Dr. Nurianti. She guided me a lot in digital advertising, digital communications. So not everything applies to everyone. So it's really not apples to apples comparison. But certain countries are also 50 years behind time. We're still experiencing moving from politics of statehood or beyond nationhood, you know, like for our state of Sarawak, we may be a state in Malaysia, but the health and education is controlled by the federal government. So these are some areas that we need to also know in making decisions that concerns the fine line between constitutional rights and constitutional privileges. Yeah. So I don't know. Have I answered your question really? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, David, for that question. Perhaps we can take one last question before we wrap the session. Anybody want to ask one final question? Anyone?
I would like to.
Yeah, okay. Okay, Christina, go ahead.
In your personal opinion, what do you think is one of the biggest learning curves that you've had throughout this position?
What? Sorry, can you repeat that again?
Yeah. In your position, what is one of the biggest learning curves that you've had?
The biggest learning curve, okay, that I have. When I joined the Performance and Management Delivery Unit, my supervisor, who was then the Minister for Transformation for the government of Malaysia, he's also a transformation guru for the country. He said to us, you either sink or you swim. I have this role for you to play, you know, there's no time for me to take every one of you through and through. But what I know is I want to build my dream team. So everybody comes with their own strength, and we see that everybody complements each other. So if we were to be placed in a container or in any form of casing, just imagine yourself to be the liquid in that casing. Whatever mold and shape it is, just flow. You just have to go with the flow. If you're unsure, I think so long as you can test yourself that this is the black and this is the white area, never go to the gray area. The moment that you have entered the gray area, that's when things get messy. So the line of path is must be cleared from the beginning. So I do like to share one last slide, Doc. If you can go back to my presentation, the story of Ubuntu actually. So I got this from a friend who sent it to me on WhatsApp, but I think it's quite interesting to share. Maybe some of you have received this. So I'm just going to read this quickly. So Ubuntu is a very nice story from Africa, and the motivation behind the Ubuntu culture in Africa. And anthropologists proposed a game to the African tribal children. He placed a basket of sweets near a tree and made the children stand 100 meters away. Then announced that whoever reaches first would get all the sweets in the basket. When he said, "Ready, steady, go," do you know what these children did? They all held each other's hands, ran together towards the tree, divided the sweets equally among themselves, ate the sweets and enjoyed it. So when the anthropologists asked them why they did so, They answered Ubuntu, which meant, how can one be happy when the others are sad? So Ubuntu in their language means, I am because we are. So this is a very strong message for all the generations. Let all of us always have this attitude and spread happiness wherever we go. So let's have a Ubuntu life. I am because we are. So in our role as public relations practitioners, I think we have to consider the entire ecosystem before we make decisions. But at the end of the day, it's the learning that you see in the decision making, in the journey, which builds you or makes you a stronger person. So thank you, Doc.
Thank you so much for such, insightful, what we call it, sharing session with our students today. I feel that a lot of you, all of my students, learn new things about government PR, about your life as a PR professional, because again, this is introductory class and some of my students perhaps never heard of PR before joining the class, and this has been, a very powerful session for them to see and to understand what exactly that we do, what kind of things that we have to pay attention on, what kind of skills perhaps that we need to polish on if we are to become a PR professionals in the future. I have the honor to work with Ms. Dubah Jabu and ministry before as a consultant, communication consultant for them when it comes to like social media. So that's how we got to know one another. And I also serve as a consultant for a brother back in our home state, Sarawak, related to communication as well. So that is, by having this relationship, I feel is a very strong opportunity, not just for me to learn from such a, distinguished PR professionals, but also the ability to connect you to my students so that they can learn from you, not just from me every day, every other week. Okay, all right. I thank everyone for paying attention to the session. Can we take a photo together, to commemorate this session? Hold on. Okay, all right, all right, I don't know how to take photo here, but I'll try. Okay, hold on. How do you do this? Perhaps like this. Okay, this is I don't really know how to use Windows, but I'll just use snipping tool. Okay, smile everyone. Okay, I use snipping tool instead of like print screen, but I'll share with everybody later today. Thank you so much for your time. And thank you so much, Ms. Dubah Jabu, for staying up late. It's 12:40 now, where you at? And again,
Rise and shine.
rise and shine. Tomorrow you have something else. I know that your life is a hectic schedule. And again, we thank you so much. And now keep you posted if the students have any further questions. And thank you so much, guys. I'll see you guys on Thursday. Okay?
Thank you. Bye.